question of the video, what is your favorite Bangboo? Hello and welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be a first impressions of the new gacha game, Zenless Zone Zero. So if you are familiar with the company Hoyoverse, you have probably at least heard the name Zenless Zone Zero. It is the name of their latest release of their latest gacha game. Now, if you've heard of Hoyoverse, you probably know of their previous two games that are super successful, that being, of course, Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. Right now, those are their two most popular releases that they have done, but a lot of people are suspecting that maybe Zenless Zone Zero could join the rankings and make it their biggest three. Now, the premise of Zenless Zone Zero is pretty far away from their other games, still set in a kind of fantasy realm, but instead of dealing with gods or powers, we are dealing with more of a sci-fi type of fantasy to where you are a normal human being and you act as a proxy to guide people through hollows, essentially just eroded areas of the city to where people can only be there for a short amount of time. So you essentially guide people through these eroded, corrupted areas filled with monsters. Now, a lot of people did have some worries, and there has been some pretty negative discourse that I've seen and a lot of others have seen online about Zenless Zone Zero. And this video is just kind of first impressions based on my own opinion of playing the game, and this video will only cover Chapter 1 content. Of course, there will be spoiler content within it, only for Chapter 1. Anything else, I will not be covering. So a lot of people were worried because it has only been about 2 years since the release of Honkai Star Rail, so it was kind of a toss-up of, would this be a good game? Would it just be a ripoff of the other games that they've released? But I really don't think it is. I think that this game has a very good story in its own right. I think that the characters are likable, they have good personalities. The animation is pretty top tier for a gacha game from what I've seen, and the voice acting is pretty phenomenal. So from the beginning, you go through the normal gacha game system of you pick which person do you want to be. And the cool thing about this is no matter if you pick the brother or the sister, both are actually pretty integral to the story as they work together to become this proxy to help illegally guide people through these hollows. And also another thing that it's quite different from Hoyoverse's other previous games, aside from maybe Tears of Themis or Honkai Impact 3rd, is these people, they have their own personality already set in. They actually do have their own voice acting, and it's pretty expressive for their animation, so you really get a feel of who you're playing as rather than you shaping the person that you're playing as, where you do with Genshin Impact. Even though they have their own names, you get to name them. You get to name your character in Honkai Star Rail, so it's just a bit of a different take. I personally really like that style, as I'm pretty creative when it comes to playing games, but I don't know, the less I have to think, the better. And so another point that I didn't feel that Hoyoverse was lacking in their previous games, but I really do like that they changed up in ZZZ, is the starting/reset point of the game to where you as the player come in. So in previous games, it was more like, oh, you're this really overpowered character and you've lost your memory in some type of way, or you're starting fresh with no memories. In ZZZ, you still have all of your memories, you have already pretty confident relationships with other characters, people already know you, you have your previous skills, but the way that the game resets is your account that you use to get clients and therefore make your income is hacked and deleted. So you start over with a new account on this proxy website. So I feel like that is a pretty plausible, natural way to restart the game to allow the player to start from zero, but it doesn't feel overly forced because in this world that they're living in, it's almost post-apocalyptic, and I feel like it's not uncommon to be hacked by people trying to get a hold of money. Maybe they were trying to eliminate this really powerful proxy, so I feel like it's pretty reasonable. Now, some really simple things that might get overlooked in this gacha game can be the voice acting and the animation. Both, I think, are pretty top tier quality. Now, with about 4 different levels of animation style to deliver the dialogue and the story to players, I feel like that does a great job at showcasing the different art styles that ZZZ has in store. My favorite being the comic book-esque art style that usually comes up during major plot points. And also, when it cuts to the full cutscene animation, it does almost give you the feeling that you're watching a clip from an anime. I think that the quality really shows that a lot of effort was put into it. I think that the voice acting fits the characters, especially Billy. I think that personality just seeps from these characters, and you can almost place them in archetypes to where you just know how they're going to interact with other characters, and it happens just like that. I feel like it's a really big step up because you do see a lot of characters interacting even outside of their own little organizations that they're divided into. Now, when it comes to the story, I think the story is pretty good so far. Granted, I'm still only in chapter 1 as this is a first impressions, but so far I think that the storytelling and the way it's broken up is very digestible, and due to the wide assortment of voice acting in most of the dialogue, I feel like less reading is needed. And so it really helps move it along. You don't have to read paragraph after paragraph yourself. And also a cool thing that ZZZ does is it will have you switch POVs and follow different characters telling the same story, but you will get different perspectives. And I think that does a very, very good job at being able to break up the story and keep people with low attention spans, i.e. me, really invested in the story, because that was something, especially with specifically Genshin Impact, I really fell off, but I wanted to be invested in the story. But it was so much reading, I felt like I was in more of a visual novel. And that is something that has luckily so far not happened with ZZZ. So a big part of the game is of course the fighting mechanics, and I think those are pretty good. If you look up anything about the game, you will see very quickly that this was actually inspired by fighting games. And so you can see some of that included in the fighting part of the game. Now, when you go into missions to get to the fighting part, the commissions are divided into 3 different types: the story commissions, exploration commissions, and then just straight up combat commissions. Once you select that, you will dive into the TV screen portion of the game. And this, even in my personal experience, just talking to friends who have played this game, this is where a lot of contempt comes from in the game. A lot of them did not really like these TV screen sections to where it's almost like a little dungeon roguelike. You go through and there will be different screens that will give you different effects, and you have to crawl your way to the combat. It really just made everything come to a crawl having to go through this. I didn't like all of the dialogue. I thought that really did slow it down. I did agree with that. A lot of them didn't like having to solve the puzzles in it. They thought that it was pretty tedious. They just wanted to get to the fighting. I totally understand that. For me personally, I enjoyed these little puzzles. I thought that it did a good job of breaking up the fighting sections, so it didn't get mundane and tedious just going back to back to back fighting sections. But I can totally see that other players do not want to deal with that, so that is a completely fair criticism. So sadly, not quite sure what's going to happen with the TV screens in the future. I've heard talks that they might remove them. I'm not even sure if those are considered rumors or more solid. I guess we will see in the future, but I do like them, but I know a majority of people don't, so I might lose them in the future. Now, once you get into the actual fight in these screens, you will be able to put together your team, and that can consist of up to 3 players and your Bangboo, also known as the little guy that your MCs transport their consciousness into to help guide their clients through these hollows. Bangboos don't play a major role, but they do include major cuteness in the game. I truly love them. They're essentially the Paimon type mascot of the game, and they don't really talk to you, which is great. The main talking person would be Fairy, the AI that takes over the siblings' computer and helps guide them through everything. Side note, I think that she is a lot better Paimon character. She will help progress the story, but she won't reiterate what's happened for you, and I do like that Hoyoverse continues to progress the game and make it less hand-holdy for a child and more just guiding someone through the game. I think that that is a big improvement. But anyway, so back to the teams. Your Bangboo, it's the easiest to explain. It just gives you some little buffs. and it'll depend. There's multiple Bangboos that you can get. They're also in the gacha that we will get to in a second. But essentially, they're just little buffs and will occasionally help do some chip damage on the field by either running at enemies with little butcher knives in their hands, or just straight up pulling out a mini Gatling gun and just shooting at some enemies. But the main damage comes from your 3 players, and ways to get buffs include either pairing up 2 to 3 people with the same elemental type, or 2 to 3 of them coming from the same faction organization. So there are multiple ways to set stuff up, and it can make for fun team comps. I haven't tried too many different team comps because I haven't pulled that much yet. But so far, just messing around with it, it's a lot of fun. I do really enjoy it, and I feel like when you get those bonuses going, I was able to do more chain attacks, which is probably the most fun that you can have in the fighting. Just, you really see when you get chain attacks going, just the health bar get demolished. And so when it comes to the actual fighting part, it's pretty simplistic. You have your basic attack, your charge attack. Each character will charge up their own special attack that they can unleash, and as a team, they will charge up an ult that only one person can use. So there does become some strategy in this, and I do like it. It's not overly complicated right now, and I feel like it's a good entry point. I do hope that it does get more challenging, and a lot of people have hoped that it will get more challenging, especially since the fighting mechanics were inspired by games like Street Fighter. Now, I do say that and acknowledge that I am only in the first chapter, and it does make perfectly good sense for the game to start off easy and get more challenging. That is perfectly normal and happens in multiple games, and I'm going to assume that happens in the future of this game too. So a lot of people will probably be wondering how the gacha system breaks down, and other videos will surely explain it better than me as a casual gacha player. This entire channel is more casual facing, so bear with me. This is supposed to be get you inside the door, not explain everything. So like any other gacha game, it has different banners. You have the limited time banner to try and get the best character. Right now in the first section, it is Ellen Jo, the shark girl that everyone loves. Then you have the, I guess the place of the weapon banner, the W engines. And then you have the standard banner. And the cool thing about this that I have not personally seen any other gacha game do, I'm sure some might, but they include the beginner banner into the standard banner and just give you the discounted pulls built into the first 5 pulls. So like every other Hoyoverse gacha game, your first 5 pulls, you get to pay for 8 of them and you get the full 10. And that is also guaranteed your 5-star in this game. I just think that that is a nice little detail because I've seen a lot of people say that they don't want to pull on the beginner banner, and I, as a casual player, don't really understand why. I'm sure that there's reasons, but I find it cool that they just shoved it all into one. I don't know, nice little detail. And then finally, I thought that that was all, but once you progress a little bit, you also unlock the Bangboo banner. And all of these are different currencies. Of course, the 2, like the limited time character and the W engines, those run on the same fancy premium currency, standard currency for the standard banner, but the Bangboos have their own. Those are the Boopons. And so don't worry about having to split up your already like gained currency to try and pull just for Bangboos. You will get those gradually as you play the game, and it's an entire separate currency. Like all other gacha games, there's also a store that lets you get like 5 of the premium and the standard currency each month. Now, another thing that I've had people tell me is kind of weird, iffy, a bit off, especially in the beginning of their gameplay, is the UI of the main menu. So if you've pulled it up, you know that there is a dynamic background of a character of your choice, and then all of the icons at the bottom, almost like a desktop screen. So the main issue that people were having was it was just the icons, so it was kind of hard to figure out where everything was in the main menu. But once you actually spend some time with it and get more familiar with the icons, you'll see that it's actually a really good UI. So at the bottom of the screen of the main menu will be most of the UI elements, the menus that you will access more frequently, maybe a few times in your play session per day. And then there's a like subfolder one to where it's the stuff that you will maybe only touch like one time. It's got like your mail, your logout, stuff like that. But where it's easier to access is stuff like where you pull your battle pass, this thing called the 𝕞𝕠𝕣𝕖, which is really cool, and all the stuff that you will be reaching for more than a few times each play session. So that is definitely something that I would warn people. You're going to be a bit confused and lost in the beginning because you don't know what they mean by just the symbols, but trust me, after a few hours of having to use them, you will get used to it. You will know what they mean just by looking at them, and I think that it becomes a pretty clean, simple UI, and also just it clears up for the dynamic background to be a big focus if you just want to look at your character. I don't know, just a cute little thing that, just a little extra thing. So going back to the 𝕞𝕠𝕣𝕖, that is a forum page that you will be frequently using. That is how you get customers for your proxy service, and also where a resource for those lore hunters will love to spend some time. So a big divide for a lot of gacha games that have a pretty prominent story is the two sides of people who just want to casually play the game, beat stuff up, and people who really want to know the story, want to know all the lore as much as they can get. They love to read about it. So the great thing about this game is, so far, I have not been bogged down by a lot of lore, too much backstory. The characters in the actual storyline tell you what you need. If you need some background, they will give it to you, but nothing more than what you really need. Now, if you want to know more, like what a carrot is in the beginning of the game, that is where the 𝕞𝕠𝕣𝕖 comes in. Not only can you find your daily commissions in there, and to where you get even some of your story missions, I think. You'll get them a lot from people posting on this forum page. You can also find information on the lore, like what a carrot is. So this is a great way for people who want that lore, want more of that story, to dig in and connect the little pieces in the background. I think that it's just great because it's not forcing it on the people who don't want it, but the people who do want it, it's right there for them. So I really just think that Hoyoverse has stepped up a lot of things in multiple departments across this game. You can really see the improvements from comparing ZZZ to the base release of Genshin Impact. I think that they've really grown as a company, and even though I don't play all their games a super whole lot, I have dabbled in basically every game that they've released, and I love seeing them grow and become a better company because, like it or not, they're basically the biggest gacha game company releasing games right now. So they will hopefully help push gacha in a good direction for the future. So that basically wraps up the rambling first impressions that I have of Chapter 1 of Zenless Zone Zero. I think it's a pretty decent game. I've been enjoying it. I think that it is a really good game for people who want more of a sci-fi fantasy twist rather than a traditional fantasy with gods twist. So far the story seems pretty decent. I hope that both it and the combat continue to improve throughout all of the content that is already there and future to come. I think that the characters are pretty fun. The combat is, once again, very smooth. The inputs are pretty responsive. And overall, it's doing what a game should be. It's giving me fun entertainment. So if you have played this game, drop your impressions in the comment section. Are you liking it? Are you not liking it? Are there things that you think are a bit off? Are there things that you love? Question of the video, what is your favorite Bangboo? And if you haven't started playing the game, but maybe wanted to wait a bit and get some impressions of the game, did I make you want to play it? Did I make you want to run far away from it? Leave all of your thoughts for Zenless Zone Zero down in the comments below. I love to go read through all of the comments. And so with that, that will be the end of the video. Thank you for all who watched it. I really do appreciate it. Give me a like if you think I did good, and give me a subscribe if you want more random gaming content. That is what this channel is full of. So I hope all of you have a great day, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye guys!